Assalamualaikum to Series 1 and to everyone in the class. Today we are from Group 4 and will be presenting regarding the topic of Environmental Management Accounting or known as EMA and Climate Change or known as CC. Before we begin the presentation, I will introduce my team members which are Ainatul Munira, Muhammad Muzaffar, Nurul Akasha and me myself, I am Ani Akila. So let's move on to the next slide. So, what is EMA? Based on the International Federation of Accountants (IFAC), EMA can educate the managers about the environmental effects of an organization outside of its borders and the environmental challenges that affect the organization, thus helping the management in making a better decision. EMA can assist in detecting environmental issues created, environmental improvement made, and how they connect to the organization's financial success. Moreover, it is the identification, collection, analysis, and use of two types of information for internal decision making. Next, Muzaffar will continue the presentation.
Thank you, Ani Akila. Next, I will explain to you about the focus of environmental management accounting. First one is physical environmental and the second one is monetary environmental. First, let's talk about the monetary environmental focus on environmental aspect of corporate activities expressed in monetary units such as measure expressed in expenditure on cleaner production cost of funds, investment in capital that improve the environmental and monetary values of environmental asset. Meanwhile, the physical environmental are more focused on the company impact to the nature environmental expressed in terms of physical units such as the flow and destiny of energy, water, mineral and waste. Next, I will pass the presentation to the next presenter.
Besides, EMA also describes the management information. That management information includes identifying and estimating the cost of environment-related activities, identifying and monitoring the use and the cost of resources such as water, electricity and fuel so that costs can be reduced. Thirdly, making sure environmental considerations form part of capital investment decisions and assessing the likelihood and impact of environmental waste. Besides, it also includes environment-related indicators as part of routine performance monitoring and benchmarking activities against environmental best practice.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Ainatul Binti Rahimi. I will continue the presentation with the second main point of the topic, which is climate change. So, what is the climate change? Climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. These shifts may be natural, such as through variations in the solar cycle, or they are caused by human activities which are primarily due to the burning fossil fuels. So, different places have different climates. Climate change may cause weather patterns to be less predictable. It is due to the connection with damaging weather events like more frequent and more intense hurricanes, floods, downpours, and winter storms.
Thank you, Ainatul. Now I will explain regarding the examples of climate change or CC. The first example is regarding the temperature. The average temperature across the country has been rising quickly. It is predicted that due to the warming climate, heat wave will occur more frequently and with greater intensity. Western Peninsula Malaysia experiences a more significant rise in temperature when compared to other regions in Malaysia. According to the World Bank, between 1970 until 2013, Peninsula Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak regions experienced surface mean temperature increases of 0.14 degrees Celsius until 0.25 degrees Celsius per decade. Okay, the second example is related to rainfall and floods. According to the World Bank, the intensity of tropical storms in Southeast Asia is projected to increase due to the climate change. It has also found a significant increase in annual rainfall during the monsoon period and an increase in the number of days classified as heavy rainfall, which is rainfall more than 20 millimeters. The frequency and severity of flood events have increased in recent decades and Malaysia is particularly vulnerable to flooding. Malaysia has already been hit by major floods caused by rapidly changing weather patterns and climate variability in the region. Okay, for the last example of CC is regarding coastal areas. Coastal zones are particularly vulnerable to climate variability and change. Higher temperatures are expected to further raise sea level, expanding the ocean water, melting glacier and small ice caps and causing portion of Greenland and the Antarctic ice sheets to melt. So the World Bank has reported that rising sea levels are predicted to have a significant negative impact for Malaysia's coastal zone, especially in the east coast. Some suggest by 2040, potentially all of Malaysia's mangrove zone could become submerged, and by 2060, sea level rise might impact the country's industrial zones. Reduction of mangrove forests will likely affect the biodiversity of coastal species. Next, I will pass the presentation to Muzaffar.
Thank you again, Ani Akila. Let's go to the interesting question. Why does climate change happen? Climate change is a change in the usual weather found in a place. It could be a change in how much rain or place usually get in a year, or a change in the place usual temperature for a month or a season. It's a phenomenon that occurs from the accumulation of greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. In short, greenhouse gas such as chlorofluorocarbon are absorbing the heat radiation. Surprisingly, the most tools that produce this gas is refrigerator and air conditioner. While chlorofluorocarbon absorbing the heat radiation, gas like carbon dioxide and methane will trap a heat. This will lead to increase of world temperature and will lead to climate change due to many heat radiation are trapped. Next, I will present to the next presenter.
Moving on is the causes that lead to climate change. One of it is the release of carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide that is produced from the burning of fossil fuels such as coal, oil and gas. These resources are used to generate electricity and also run transports like cars. The burning of these resources release a huge amount of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Fossil fuels are also used in the manufacturing industry. Secondly, deforestation or cutting down trees. Trees help in capturing or trap the release of carbon dioxide. This helps to regulate the climate. When we cut down trees, it releases the carbon that they have been storing and will disrupt the atmosphere, adding to the greenhouse effect. The next cause is the usage of nitrogen fertilizers in the agriculture sector. Nitrogen fertilizers encourage healthy development of the plant. However, the usage of these fertilizers release nitrous oxide.
Thank you, Akasha. Okay, so we have known what, why, and how the climate change occurs. So let's get further into the effects of the climate change. We may want to know what will be the effect of climate change to individuals, organizations, and the government. Okay, so firstly, climate change causes physical damage in terms of people's health conditions and infrastructure. People may lose their home, workplace, business, or even infrastructure assets due to the extreme weather changes like floods and bushfires. And repeated damage makes the cost go up drastically due to the limited insurance coverage and rebuilding costs. All of this situation can affect to all group of people since their income, profits, or revenue can be reduced. Also, the climate change can lead people to struggle with conditions like asthma, allergies, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is also known as COPD. Since they suffer to get clean air, safe drinking water, sufficient food, and secure shelter. Okay, other than that, climate change has interrupted the supply chain. The climate change may force people to migrate and slow down their economic activities. Thus, the government may lose their skilled citizens, which could harm the economic development. Since climate changes threaten the provision of ecosystem services, it may lead to job and work productivity losses, which may affect the revenues earned by those individuals, business, or even the government. As for example, agricultural sectors may be severely affected by the ocean acidification and changing ocean temperatures, since it decreases the ability of coral reefs to provide storm protection and limit biodiversity. And this situation has altered the distribution and productivity of fisheries.
Thank you, Ainatu. So now let's look at the benefits of EMA to industry. Firstly, EMA can improve the sales or reduce the sales erosion. Nowadays, the awareness toward the environment has been increasing. Thus, it will influence the people's decision and buying behavior. For example, some consumers actually prefer to buy environmental products. Secondly, the other benefit of EMA is cost reduction. In the establishment of EMA, an organization is able to identify, allocate, and reduce the costs, including the environmental costs. There are a few environmental costs that organizations need to look at, which are the prevention costs, appraisal costs, internal failure costs, and external failure costs. Number 3, EMA also helps the industry in reducing their cost of failure. This can be seen by the organization to easily track and manage the use and flow of energy and materials. The usage of the resources and materials such as water and electricity will be used efficiently and effectively to avoid any waste of consumption. Lastly, EMA can improve the image of the organization. EMA helps to provide more accurate and comprehensive information for the measurement and reporting of the environmental performance. Manager will use this information to make the decision regarding the corporate activity that will affect the environment. Thus, it will help to improve the company image with the stakeholders such as local community, customers, employees, government, and finance provider. Next, I will pass the presentation to Muzaffar.
Thank you again, Ani Akila. So, I'm going to answer the question of how environmental management accounting relate to climate change. Climate change is a long-term problem with a long-term measure required. Without a strategic plan, business may fall behind their competitors at worst, leaving them with unsustainable business model. Hence, the accountant need to come up with a planning that can make the company or business sustain in the market. Next, business have become increasingly aware of the environmental implication of their operation, product, and service on the business and its finance. So, the costs need to be incurred in the financial reporting. Next, all aspects of business are affected by environmental pressure, including the accounting. So, from the accounting perspective, the initial pressure will fall in the external reporting, including the environmental disclosure in financial reports or production of separate environmental accounts. As the result of a climate change, certain business, especially those who are operating in highly industrialized sectors such as mineral extraction, waste management, water management, and many else, are facing a huge increase in the cost associated with their environmental impacts. So, I will pass to the next presenter.
Now, I will be explaining how does the use of EME can reduce climate change. The identification of environmental costs can help in reducing climate change. There are a few types of environmental costs. Firstly, environmental prevention costs. Environmental prevention costs are the costs of activities undertaken to prevent the production of waste. For instance, factories can install air filters that can be used to separate vapors and fluids from the air stream carried over from the manufacturing process. The installation of air filters can be expensive, however, it is crucial to reduce the waste released to the environment. Next, we have environmental detection costs. This cost relates to the costs that incurred to ensure that organizations comply with regulations and voluntary standards. Detection costs help companies adhere to regulations in avoiding the need to pay high amount of fines and penalties. Thirdly, environmental internal failure costs. This is the cost incurred from performing activities that have been produced waste that have not been discharged into the environment. For example, the cost that incurred in treating the waste to ensure the safety of the public and environment. Lastly, environmental external failure costs. Environmental external failure costs are the costs incurred on activities performed after discharging waste into the environment.
Okay, next we want to measure how effectiveness of EMA to climate change in the current business operation. Firstly, a firm can have an effective cost utilization when applying EMA in their business operation. It is because EMA allows the firm to further classify the environmental costs into specific categories, such as environmental prevention costs, environmental detection costs, internal and external failure costs like Akasha mentioned before. As for example, effective EMA can reduce the electricity costs incurred when the firm develops new working environment like work from home. And at the same time, the electricity consumption from air conditioning, fridge, and other supplies that release carbon dioxide can be reduced, which can prevent from the climate change. And besides that, the firm can also have a proper environmental risk management since EMA ensures the creation and updating of disaster response plans to be informed. Proper environmental risk management can lead to positive perception of the consumers, investors, and the public, as the firm is seen to be complying with the government policies and regulations for seizing the opportunity to produce a product-oriented environment.
Thank you, Ainatul. Now I will continue the presentation on the effectiveness of EMA and CC in the future business operation. Firstly, EMA and CC can avoid the climate crisis in the future. It helps the organization to address the threat of climate change and become more aware of environmental issues such as the issue of carbon emission. EMA can be effectively managed by using the EMA control tools which may improve the carbon management quality. The environmental management accounting will provide the company with benchmarking activities against environmental best practice. As a result, applying EMA in the organization will help to reduce the gases in the atmosphere. Secondly, it can enhance the decision-making process of an organization. This can be done by informing the manager about the organization's environmental impacts beyond its boundaries, as well as environmental issues such as climate change that will affect the organization. This includes both the economic drivers and the outcome of environmental issue. Furthermore, it also helps in analyzing the causes of environmental issue, which includes the improvement in the environment that have been made and how they reflect on the economic performance of the organization. That is all from me. Next, I will pass the presentation to Muzaffar.
Last but not least, thank you, Ani Akila. So there's a few initiatives made by companies to reduce and fight climate change. As an example, Nestle had implemented a regenerative of agriculture practice that can end deforestation while aim to plant 20 million trees every year. Next, a company Enelway that create a sustainability committee in their company to monitor and advise about how the company can continuously helping fighting climate change while does not lose any of their profit. Next, a company like HP eliminating almost 75% of their single-use plastic packaging to help fight the climate change. And lastly, while company like Tesla are trying to build an electric car that can reduce carbon in atmosphere. I will pass the presentation to the next presenter.
Here are the initiatives taken by the government to reduce climate change. Firstly, implementation of national policy on the environment. This policy was first implemented in 2002. National policy on the environment aims to achieve a clean, safe, healthy and productive environment for present and future generations. Other than this policy, we also have national policy on climate change. National policy on climate change was established in 2009 and the main action is to come up with relevant adaptation and mitigation strategy to especially address issues in the agriculture sector as agriculture and climate change are interrelated. Besides developing and implementing these policies, government has actively involved in international conventions regarding climate change. For instance, in 2012, there is participation in United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development.
Okay, thanks again, Akasha. So now we move into our next subtopic, which is the issue that can be related to EMA and climate change. This subtopic will be focused on the rising sea level in Kelang and Kuala Selangor in 2021. The rising of sea level has been triggered by the continuous heavy rain occurred between 17 December 2021 and 9 December 2021. This situation has caused a massive flood to occur at part of Selangor and the Klang Valley at the end of the year 2021. And at the same time, the urban development there also becomes the major cause of the flood to happen. We already know it has been thousands of business owners and other Malaysian citizens who are severely affected by the flood, and it clearly shows that the current system used by the authorities will not help them to thrive. None of the residents were against the development. However, they want the developers to be accountable in cases where they pollute or exacerbates disasters for communities. The developers cannot only continue to aim for profit while neglecting the well-being of the people. we can see that the damages that the residents and the business owners experience also go beyond the monetary and infrastructures. And it can be seen on the water damage all the furniture and electrical appliances in their business premises and residential properties. So, what will be the actions to be taken to solve this issue? Then, I will pass this part to Musafa.
As for the conclusion, conventional accounting do not provide a complete and adequate information for environmental management purpose. So, government need to develop a better understanding of risks and opportunities bring by the climate change so the company can help by playing their own role in fighting climate change. Government also can giving more incentive to encourage company to work for sustainability. Incentive can be made by tax redemption, government grant or many else. Government also can set a stricter regulation so it can be a prevention for a company that want to give a negative impact to the environment. That's all from us. Thank you.